It's a pleasure to be back in Helsinki. I not only love fashion, I love Helsinki more than fashion, perhaps. It's great to be at this conference. I have the pleasure of kicking off a new series of conversations called Alpha Talks that will happen in Helsinki, in Copenhagen, in Stockholm, in Oslo, and in Reykjavik. The Nordic region has experienced a boom in fashion. It's become sure of itself, both its practitioners and the surrounding culture, both internally in our region, but surely also externally to the outside international global world. Each conversation in these 5 cities will focus on its specific local fashion culture, and now we are in Finland. So we will focus specifically on Finnish fashion, its educational system and institutions, and local people with innovative practices. Culture, as we know, of course, is diverse, and it's made up of different voices and generations. And today I use the term Finnish fashion to refer quite freely to fashion that is created in Finland regardless of national identity or cultural background. But I couldn't do this without my 2 lovely panelists. My far left, we have Annamari Vänskä, who is Senior University Lecturer of Design Cultures at the Aalto University. She has authored several international fashion research books, and her work spans fashion as embodied culture and digitalization of fashion. She's also curated several exhibitions, including Intimacy at the Design Museum here in Helsinki, that looked at contemporary Finnish fashion, which is part of a larger research project that she's currently leading. To my left, we have Rolf Ekroth, who's fashion designer, creative director, and the founder of the eponymous Rolf Ekroth. Upon graduation from Aalto University, Rolf has been a finalist at Year. He has won the main prize at Alpha. Rolf has shown his collections at Pitti Uomo and Milan Fashion Week, and he's currently one of the designers at the support scheme New Talent at Copenhagen Fashion Week. It's great to have you. Thanks for doing this with me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So my knowledge of Finnish fashion, I mean, my big blurb is soon over. It's over to you soon. But my knowledge of Finnish fashion stems largely from running Alpha, an organization that empowers and supports Nordic fashion designers. And for the past 6 years, we've had a main prize winner from Aalto, a graduate from Aalto, which is quite telling of the graduate level at the school. But before we begin to delve into Finnish fashion and what Aalto does and what Rolf does, I think I'd like to set the scene by asking you the same question. If you can share, Annamari, 3 words that you associate with Finnish fashion.
Innovativeness, functionality meets sustainability in its different forms. So I think that, do you want me to elaborate? Or?
I think we'll come back to that.
Okay.
But it was, so innovation, sustainability, and functionality. All right, okay. Yeah. And you, Rolf?
Lack of funds.
3 words.
Oh,
yes.
That's good. I think that extends beyond Finland.
Yeah, might be.
All right, but thanks. So Finnish fashion in an international context, at least, is tightly linked to the success of Aalto University, and the designers graduated from the fashion department. Aalto is positioned very high on the ranking of international fashion institutions, which I guess also resonates with the standing of the wider Finnish educational system. We have Aalto graduates winning at international awards, talent awards, and we also now see Finnish graduates at the top tier of international fashion houses. I'd like to begin by asking you, Annamari, what is it that Aalto or the fashion department at Aalto does right? What characterizes the fashion department at the school?
Well, I think one of the main characterizations is that it's bringing together fashion design and textile design. So we are educating students who are have really deep knowledge about different material methods combined with the conceptual thinking and research-based kind of approach to fashion, a rather critical way of looking at what fashion is, how it should be. So, and then of course we have the high level of artistic teaching as well. So it's kind of a combination of different things. And through that, we sort of try to educate the students into becoming kind of aware of what's happening out there in the world, looking critically at that and trying to find new solutions, how to do things better. I think this is really the key, what we are doing. And then when it's also very practice-based, hands-on work, so through sort of this hands-on work, students get to know the materials and the different methods really well, and I think it really gives them an advantage after graduation.
Sorry.
Well, I don't know what you think, but I'm looking at it from the perspective of an educational system. I think it's really a lot to do with gaining knowledge, being aware, being critical.
You
Yes,
spoke
and
of this
artistic at the
merger
same time.
of textile design and fashion design. What do you think this instills in the students, that they're not just, designers creating shape and form, but they're also actually trained, educated to, produce fabric and material that they create shape and form from?
Yeah. So I think this is a great plus, because then, of course, if you think about fashion, it's material culture, it's conceptual culture, it's art, it's consumption, it's very many different things. But to become kind of critically, deeply knowledgeable about these different aspects, I think it's crucial for future designers to do the work, do the job.
Speaking of future, what kind of future are you hoping that your graduates are prepared for?
Well, I'm hoping that we can change the status quo, what we are currently doing, and the future would be brighter, obviously. And there would be job opportunities, and I'm sure that with the educational background that we can provide, it can happen, yes. But Rolf's 3 words are sort of in the back of my head at the same time. So especially if you are aspiring to become an entrepreneur, have your own label, then in Finland it has been a challenge thus far, and it is.
It's
so
a big
we are
challenge.
hoping that there would be more investors, for example, investing in the new innovative ways of doing things.
Following on from that, Rolf, you finished at the Aalto about 10 years ago, less than 10 years?
Dropped out.
Dropped
I'm a
out.
college dropout.
Yeah, well,
Like
you are a
Kanye.
successful
Very
college
cool.
dropout. And you've established your label here in Finland. And from the start, I'd say you have sort of worked internationally, or you had an international scene. And it's interesting because most graduates are advised, I believe, from Aalto and surely also from Alpha's point of view, not to start their own, but actually begin by working for someone else in order to learn the ropes. What made you sort of go against that grain?
No, I mean, that was my plan, but then it's just situations came up. I won a few competitions, I got a bit of a name, and then we did the Guest Nation Finland project in Pitti-Uomo with Uni Communications, and I got enough press from there in Finland, so I found investors, or they found me. And then they had the idea of me starting to do Terinit, which was old Finnish sporting heritage brand. And that sort of led to me starting my own label as well. So I wasn't prepared. I had very little knowledge of anything, but there's so few opportunities. So when I got it, I had to take it. So, I mean, going back in time, maybe I wouldn't do it again. And there were definitely better offers on the table abroad, but I mean, I've learned a lot. I've gotten a lot more gray in my beard, and I hate my life at the moment. So it's getting better.
Okay, well, it could only get better from that. Do you think that Aalto prepared you for life after university
No, at least not the BA program. The BA program was solely focused on the design part.
Yeah.
So maybe if I would have done the masters, I think there's courses that help you a bit, but nothing can prepare you to the realities of having your own label and what it takes and how much it costs and those sort of things. So I don't know what could have prepared a course here and there.
Yeah. And many students do leave Finland after graduation because the clothing industry here is not substantial enough to sustain people economically and sustain their life. What are Annamari, what are the alternatives for those brave enough to stay here?
Well, of course, some brands, companies that can hire students, obviously, and then they can start their own labels as well. Then there is a rather big community of graduate students who are forming these communities, and I'm sure that there's kind of this undergrowth which is necessary for the field also to develop. So I think that it really depends on the student what they sort of aim at, we don't have any ready-made answers. So in a way, we provide some guidance towards, but then it's up to the student whether they want to stay here or go abroad or do something entirely different.
Yeah. So, sort of looking at Finnish fashion or the context of Finland, Rolf, when I read your show briefs, your show notes, and I read about your work and speaking to you, I know that your work references childhood and adolescence, and there's a sense of nostalgia in your work, even in your show music. And I know it's not an easy question, but I would still like you to sort of try to unpack how would you say that Finnish culture is reflected in your work?
Yeah, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
It's difficult because it's basically my memories of my childhood, and that sort of hopefully translates into something real. Like I've learned the hard way that I shouldn't, if I'm a brand from Finland, I should do Finnish things or things that are close to me. I maybe shouldn't be inspired by Japanese animes like I was in the beginning. Like it doesn't sell abroad. Like it doesn't feel authentic. Mm-hmm. So that's why I did the not radical, but I did the change to start to talk more about my experiences growing up. But then again, I know I've only grown up here, so I don't know how much different this is from the rest of the world. So this just feels normal to me, like the small handcrafted details. Those are just things that we grew up with, playing around in camps, summer camps and stuff like that. But really difficult question. I have no idea. Hopefully it's people from further away can maybe evaluate it better than myself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as a Dane looking at your work, I do feel both a sense of, understanding, but also outsiderness, because there is obviously a Nordic bond, but there's still something. Your summer camps, I'm sure, look different to my summer camps. The friendship bracelet that I know that you've used. So you always have these showpieces in your work that are sort of these very developed or conceptual ideas that I would say in a way instills some kind of Finnishness, at least from an outsider point of view.
Yeah, and it's very Finnish because it starts out with being something fun to do by hand, and then my plans go out of hand, and then it just becomes a living nightmare. So at the end of the collection, we hate all of the ideas that I had, that me and my parents and my interns have to do. So yeah, I think that's the Finnish part, that we actually hate what we do at the end of the thing.
That's a very constructive approach to creating. But you also speak about the sort of a free interpretation of old crafting traditions. And what would those be, just to sort of understand it?
That's even more difficult for me.
All right,
yeah,
okay.
Sorry. But I mean, it started off with things that I saw my grandma doing, my mom doing, like small things. And then what I've learned in school was that I get relaxed when I do stuff by hand, and I tend to forget like other problems. So it's more of a meditative thing, and then it's fun that we get to put it to be a part of the collection. And I guess it's more like a soulfulness thing. even though it's just stupid armwear that we put in the clothing, but yeah.
But I guess we can all relate to that, how that, doing something with our hands sort of puts our minds at ease. Also, a thing that I guess we can also relate to in the Nordics is that I've read that the Finns refer to themselves as a shell suit nation, which is sort of this tied to the weather and utilitarian gear worn to overcome the shitty weather, right?
Yeah.
And I guess that's something across the Nordics we can relate to. But is something does that resonate with you in terms of the Finnishness of a stamp of your work?
Yeah, I've been trying to find a way to do that in an interesting way. I'm not sure yet. Like, I feel to make fun of it isn't my way of approaching it. So I wouldn't want to be too cynical and think that's ugly and that's why it's cool. So I'm not yet sure. I mean, we have shell suits and trackwear in my collections, but I'm trying to make them as cool as possible and not play on the things that basically Finns dress horribly and we buy all of our clothes from supermarkets.
Okay, so just to give a little bit of a historical context before we move on, the Finnish clothing industry began in the 19th century and has developed with a strong sort of heritage of focus on fabric production. So textile production is very much at the backbone of Finnish fashion, which is also clear today with textile innovations happening in the country. But I'd like to establish Marimekko, of course, as the first wave, I'd say, of Finnish fashion established in 1951 as a fabric and textile production. And we, just walking around Helsinki, it seems as if they have flagship stores everywhere. Not just stores, but flagship stores. And so it's become this iconic lifestyle brand that is known for its bold graphic prints and functionalist, durable, simple, timeless clothing, and now also home decor. I've also read that there was a time where 80% of Marimekko products was sold inside Finland, which is pretty impressive, and basically everybody wore Marimekko in Helsinki. I don't think that's the case anymore, but I think Marimekko is still very much the backbone of the Finnish fashion industry that we have today. So, and Rolf, before we finish sort of mulling over your work, I think your work is obviously characterized by strong, full textile prints and outerwear. Are you aware, obviously that might be a stupid question, of course you're aware of the print heritage of Marimekko, but how do you relate to, or do you relate to this printed fashion heritage that is so Finnish?
I wouldn't say at all, but it's difficult for me to understand completely how my mind works. So, yeah, I mean, there might be some ideas that come from that heritage, but we didn't start off with doing prints at all. It was just when I found a new girlfriend who did really good prints that we started doing prints. so that's basically why we have prints now, because I have a talented girlfriend.
That's good. Annamari, perhaps you can help me understand the impact of Marimekko, in addition to obviously prints, but I mean, how would you say that the legacy of Marimekko is still felt in the work of the graduates at Aalto, or is it?
Don't know about that really, but I would say that of course it characterizes Finnish fashion in many ways. It's something that people know internationally. I think it's the only brand that they actually know when you start talking with people. So it has this sort of image of Finnishness, and then I think to think that it's a brand created by strong Finnish women. Yeah. And decidedly ungendered, something that's also kind of really important for us as a nation, I would say. I think that they've been integral in sort of building us, you know, so they are part of who we are in a sense, in a weird way. And I think that currently we have this, I don't know, maybe I've always had this love-hate relationship to that, because it's something that my mom wore I was forced to wear. Then I decided to wear, gave it up. So I don't know, it's something that sort of goes generationally or almost now. So, and I think it says something about Finnishness in some ways, and it's sort of that, in that way it associates to Finnish fashion. And also to the young designers who might be then employed by Marimekko. Marimekko has been very good at employing students, and as you know, so that's one place to work, definitely. And kind of then also, I don't know, it would open up some rethinking what it could be, what their designs could be, and yeah. So I don't know if it's so prominent in our studies at all, but maybe it's somewhere there, sort of our cultural genetics also, almost like. But I think it's when you said that you don't really know. I think it's really like you don't really know necessarily, but it may come in the sort of these loose designs or the colors or the print world. But then, what's the connection really? Maybe it's hard to define.
But I think I can sort of draw a parallel. In Denmark, you know, every middle-class home would have an Arne Jacobsen chair, then a Penton lamp, or Royal Copenhagen tableware, Georg Jensen silverware, to the extent where it's become a cultural cliche.
Yeah.
It's something that
is
perhaps not as cool anymore. And I think I'd like to ask that question as well. Has Marimekko undergone a similar journey from being this cultural emblem to becoming a cliche?
What do we say to that?
It's not safe to talk about
It's not safe.
Are there any employees?
I don't know about the cliche, but certainly it has a very strong presence.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's something that is clearly there.
Yeah.
I guess, like from a fashion's point of view, it's a bit sad that they're mostly known for the one print and napkins that you get on the airplane.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to take a big leap from talking about Marimekko, establishing it perhaps as the first wave, and then looking at the 90s and the noughties as the next sort of wave where we begin to see new things happening in Finnish fashion, because there was a new generation of designers founding their own labels, including Ivana Helsinki, Hanna Saaren, Sami Jussi Koski, Paula and Pirjo Suhonen, Anna Ruhunen, and some years later, Thomas and Anna Laittinen, and Heikki Salonen somewhat later. And I'm not grouping them by aesthetic or necessarily by age, but they came sort of in the aftermath of, you know, the late 90s. And Annamari, I'm curious to know what happened at the time that perhaps made designers brave enough to believe that this was a good idea?
Well, many things culturally happened, of course. So Finland wasn't really, even though we talk about Marimekko, so I would say that majority of Finns bought some other Finnish, you know, clothes than Marimekko. Finland in the 1970s and 80s, when Soviet Union was still there, in place, we had a lot of smaller and mid-size and big brands that produced a lot of functional wear that was then imported to Soviet Union. And we had a really big clothing production industry here in Finland at the time, until the fall of Soviet Union, which was sort of also kind of we didn't have any backup plan. Sort of. So when it collapsed and this import-export also collapsed, so then we didn't really have anything. And then there was the recession. But then with the rise of Nokia as kind of this new Finnish design company, I think that there was then a new kind of a spirit at the end of the 1990s, mid-90s onwards, and sort of from there, I think that this new generation of designers then grew. And of course, it was also the time of opening culturally. So we were really closed as a culture, Finland, until the mid-90s, I would say. And then we started traveling, and I don't know, EU was. We became part of EU, and so forth. So there were a lot of things, political and cultural things that were happening, which I think sort of enabled also the rise of this new Finnish fashion that we are witnessing now. And then moving on maybe to, closer to the contemporary times, 2010, 12, 11, when, or a little bit earlier, late noughties, when the former University of Arts and Design, now Aalto University, sort of made more effort in fashion and textile design and fashion design, and there were hires such as Tuomas Laitinen and Pirjo Hirvonen, very important people, kind of then taking up the role of kind of rethinking what Finnish fashion could be, and also thinking it in terms of internationalization and not just catering for the national our markets, but really like educating students to think broadly, the world broadly, and think about fashion in a broad way, and sort of finding your pathways in different ways. So I think that's the kind of the education is really important here. I really do think so. Without sort of huge amount of a dedication into developing education and also research around it, we wouldn't be here today, I don't think.
And standing on the shoulders of what you're saying now, you just said, is the next generation where Rolf, I'd say you're part of that generation, but also joined by other people like Latemier, by Hinders, Jenny Huttunen, Simona Ilmonen, and more recently Vane. And I'm not joining you by aesthetic or age, but just sort of these movements happening. Would you say that you feel part of a new generation of Finnish designers?
I've never stopped to think about it, but I mean, guess we're a part of something, but I mean, it's not, I don't see it as a really bright future right now, just because of the finances and the struggles and people having to put their labels on breaks and like, I'm not sure what this is. I think in a few years, maybe we can look back at this and say that this was something, well, at least like we get into the papers and we get on Vogue runway and we get our collections reviewed. So I think it's a step forward, and there's a really good and fun bunch of talented people right now doing it. So.
But I think you're also touching on something essential, that media hype obviously doesn't translate into financial stability.
No.
So that hype is in sort of such a stark contrast to the working, your harshness of the lifestyle of actually running a label.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's what sort of unites you, the struggles. I don't know.
It definitely unites us, and we bitch a lot to each other.
Okay. Culture is obviously what we do, and it's the practices and the norms and the values that we share, whether we bitch or we celebrate. And Finnish fashion is no exception. It's made up of a network of designers, educational institutions, museums that exhibit fashion, organizations that support and promote fashion, including Fashion in Helsinki, and also Finnish fashion and textiles. And one thing is obviously how Finland or Finnish fashion navigate internally. And another thing is its internationalization, as you spoke about, Annamari, which from a media point of view seems to be a success. But I'm still curious to know, how is fashion viewed inside Finland? Is it viewed as culture, Annamari?
More and more so, definitely. I think that the awareness that in Finland is a funny place in the sense that things have to happen outside Finland before they come acknowledged here. And it has happened in contemporary art, and I think it's happening in fashion as well.
It's the same in Denmark.
Same in Denmark, yeah. So maybe it's a global phenomenon, I don't know. But it's funny. Anyway, so we can't appreciate things that we do. Someone else has to say that, well, you're actually pretty good. And then we can say that, yeah, we are. So I think that it has brought made it more mainstream or more interesting. And we've, of course, the Aalto Fashion Show and the Fashion in Helsinki event, they've helped also to make it more, known. Sort of and developments in the social media, which is sort of, we share everything and we can share fashion. It's not so closed anymore as it was before. So it's not just for the few insiders, but it's for a more wider audience. So it's become more known, I would say. Yeah, especially in the bigger cities or towns, whatever, in Finland. Yeah.
Complete opposite. I feel like it's seen as the lowest form of the arts or the culture.
No.
The stigmatized little sister of art.
Yeah, I mean, that's my sense, but of course I'm just looking from my point of view, and I think I should always get all of the prizes and all of the money. So when I don't get it, I feel like I'm being cheated.
Yeah, all right, like that. So if you sit at a dinner table and you meet someone you've never met before and you say you're a fashion designer, do you feel that you have to justify and legitimize what you do?
I mean, it might be interesting to hear my story, but I don't think like at least cultural people are that interested in fashion.
I really disagree with that, I have to say. But I kind of relate to that as well, but it's about the way that we talk about fashion, what it is. We have a very, very narrow view of what fashion can be, and I kind of feel as an educator that one part of my job is also to educate people on how to see clothes and how to see fashion and what it actually means culturally and personally as well, as was mentioned here at the beginning. So I think that it's just about that, creating this discourse and opening it up to people so that they can actually understand what it is. Because we have this very narrow view, which is sort of disposable things, which are not really fashion in my mind at all. So we just need to change the discourse and make people more aware.
Yeah,
and I think these kinds of opportunities that we have, which are rare in Finland, can be those.
But I think I'm also taking the question a bit differently, because from my point of view, if I could never get a cultural grant, there's no way in hell. I've applied for every single one millions of times, and I know if I would paint horrible pictures of myself naked, there's a better chance that I could get a cultural fund for that. But doing fashion, I feel like it's a dirty word.
Yeah, well, I completely understand and relate to that in terms of running a fashion organization. It's a little bit similar, but I mean, so sort of we're seeing the successes internationally of people coming from Finland, but perhaps not really understanding the internal struggles of the livelihoods. What is needed, would you say, both of you, in terms of supporting a healthy internal Finnish fashion culture to consolidate itself? What could be done better here in Finland, Annamari?
Well, I would definitely. We have a seminar next Tuesday at Emma Museum. Anybody here interested to come and talk about how to transform creative work into viable business? So we definitely need the investors and funds. That's one thing. But then we also kind of maybe need the different types of people within the field, not just the designers, but also those gatekeepers and also journalists and photographers and, just cultural mediators who can spread the word, and people interested generally in making this field better and grow. So I think that there are plenty of things that we really need to do, and spreading knowledge is one of them, and then the money is then the second, and research third. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think we need more professional people in different areas of, like, we have to skip, there's too many middlemen as well taking their share of the money, and at the end there's nothing left for me. So we need professional people who know how to run a fashion house and know how to take things further, because I have to do everything by myself, and I'm clearly not enough for that. So we need just more professional people, and I don't know if there's not an easy answer to that. Plus the funds.
Yeah.
But I wholly agree. So we do really need people in different levels who kind of know the industry and know the practices and know about fashion in a deep way, who are then not just doing the design work, but also doing other things which are equally important or sometimes even more important. Yeah.
So on that note, I'm afraid we don't have time for questions, but I'm sure both Annamari and Rolf will be happy to answer any questions afterwards. Thank you so much for being so generous with your insights and perspectives, and thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you.